Welcome back, and we're in Boston. Decided to do the Freedom Walk in downtown Boston. This is the old State House. It was built in 1713 and used for colonial government and state government through the years. Today, of course, it's a museum. That brick circle was the site of the Boston Massacre on March 5th, 1770. 5 colonists were killed during that incident. Samuel Gray, James Caldwell, and Crispus Attucks all died at the scene. And Samuel Maverick, a 17-year-old, and Patrick Carr died just either a few hours or days later from their injuries. The soldiers were arrested after that and tried. Interestingly, they were defended by future President John Adams. Out of the 8 that were arrested and tried, 6 were acquitted and 2 found guilty, but their sentences were reduced. Their hands were branded. So this was an actual meeting house at the time for government, and that chair you saw was a chair from the original meeting room. And you'll see here just shortly after the clock, there's a glass case. In that glass case is a silver stein that was actually made by Paul Revere. And this was a diagram done at the time of the Boston Massacre by Paul Revere that shows the incident that was actually used in court. And everything inside that case, the coat, the journal, the briefcase, and that small chest, all belonged to John Hancock. Didn't get much shots of the bookstore, but it was interesting. It was built in 1718. It was originally an apothecary, and it became a publisher for the likes of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Oliver Wendell Holmes, Louisa May Alcott, and Nathaniel Hawthorne, just to name a few. And then this is the old South Meeting House. It was built in 1729. When it was originally built, it was built as a church, a Puritan church, and it was the largest building at that time in Boston during the Revolution. During an overflow meeting on December 16th, 1773, Sam Adams organized the Tea Party from this building. Later in 1876, it was saved from destruction. Some developers actually just wanted to knock it down and build new buildings here, but the public outcry was loud enough that it was saved. We got a chance to talk to one of the curators here, and it was really neat to learn that this is still used as a meeting house. They've had concerts here, they've had organized meetings. I mean, it's still a very active and used meeting house today. Something that's that old and has that much history to it. And I'm probably going to pronounce this one wrong, but Fanwell Hall, it was built in 1742 as a market building. It actually sits at the site of the old town dock. A lot of Boston is actually filled and used to be waterways. And now all the new buildings sit on fill. That was a statue of Sam Adams out in front of it. The neat part about it is even though it still is part of the national park system, there were park rangers in there to get stamps from. It is still a market. We had a lot of fun wandering the streets of Boston. The streets were so narrow, and so many of them are one way. I'm so glad we were able to park and just walk through downtown, because it would have been really, really difficult to find your way around and get through things, especially in a full-size truck. We just loved the architecture and the amount of old buildings throughout the neighborhood. Just amazing. And this is Paul Revere's house. They believe it to be the oldest residence in downtown Boston, and it was built around 1680. And not too far from his house is the Paul Revere statue. You can't really see it very well, but behind it you can see the steeple to the Old North Church. And the Old North Church was built in 1723. It's Boston's oldest active church building. They still have church every Sunday at this location. And of course, this is where the infamous Paul Revere's Ride 2 lanterns were put up in the steeple here, back in April 18th of 1775. Sexton Robert Newman hung 2 lanterns in the steeple, and rumor was that he climbed out a window to escape the British soldiers, and this is the window that is believed to be that one. It was actually found during some reconstruction. They had bricked it over and sealed off the entire window. The cool thing about this donation/tithe box is it's the original and dates back to the beginning of the church. And that organ you see was installed in 1759 by Thomas Johnson. And even though, yes, it's been refurbished through the years, most of the organ itself is the original that was installed in 1759. As we were wandering through the city park on our way to Bunker Hill, we saw that they actually have gas lantern streetlights. And that's a cool old fire hall. The Bunker Hill Monument, dedicated in 1843. It's a 221-foot tall obelisk. This is the location of the first major battle of the Revolutionary War. We found out in our travels that Sonja's 7 times great-grandfather, Private James Nesmith from New Hampshire, was here at the battle and served under Captain Reed. The USS Constitution. This has been on my bucket list for years. Way back when I was in the Marine Corps, I got my hands on a old plastic Revell model of the Constitution. Unfortunately, over the years and many moves and rough drives, it broke apart enough, I finally gave up on it and threw it away. And I miss that. But to be at the actual ship was just amazing. One of these days I want to find another model and actually finish it. And now that I've been there, I know what colors to paint things. But this ship just has such a storied history. It was first launched in 1797. There were 6 original ships that were designed and built. This was number 3, named by George Washington. It is the world's oldest ship still afloat. It was built in Boston at Edmund Hart's shipyards. And yes, they've had to replace masts, wood decking, and other parts over the years because of rot and maintenance. They still figured 10 to 20% of the actual ship is still completely original from 1797. And every time they've ever done any kind of repair to replace anything that was damaged, they used the original techniques and the original materials, original style materials. So it's about as authentic as you can get. It was used during the quasi-war with France, the Barbary Wars, and the War of 1812. In the Civil War, it was a training vessel. Carries 44 cannons. The woodwork was just amazing. If you like some stats, it's 304 feet long, 43.5 foot across at the berth, widest spot, and it weighs about 1,576 tons. Its main mast is 220 feet tall. I love the ship, but with my fear of heights, there's no way I could climb that. So this is the second below deck. This would be where the crew slept and ate. And this is the officers' quarters. And those beams are not very tall. I'd whack my head all the time in this ship. And this is the ship's captain and second in command's quarters. Interesting to have cannons in your meeting room, huh? The woodwork was amazing. I could have spent a lot more time here. This is actually still an active naval vessel, and the crew who are dressed up in period attire are actual active duty Navy sailors, and they maintain the ship ready to sail. They are still trained in all the proper techniques to set the sails, to run the rigging. And when we got done with our tour, we kind of got lucky. We had actually parked in a parking lot directly across the bay from the Constitution. And because of the time of the afternoon that we got back to our truck, we decided we were just going to sit still and wait for rush hour to kind of get over before we tried to drive home. What we didn't know is in the evenings they fire off a cannon and play the trumpet to bring down the flag every night. And we were not expecting it. So they have two displays, one there at the Constitution, and then there's a Constitution Museum across the parking lot. Lots of neat artifacts and additional history. Amazing model craft on these models that were built. This one shows the different levels of the ship and how it would have been constructed. The detail's just amazing. Here's a shot from what I was saying when they set off the cannon. You can kind of see the smoke to the right of the ship dissipating. That was from the cannon shot. I wish I would have pulled my camera out sooner. It was really neat to see that, though. And of course, you know, you have to buy something when you're there. Interestingly enough, they were completely out of any full-size, well, not full-size, but smaller scale models of the Constitution. The one I had back in the 80s was 3 foot long approximate, and I would have loved to have gotten another one of those. They didn't have that, but they had these little mini, like Legos style, but they're not Legos, ship model. So now I have my own Constitution that I can carry around in my trailer. And I have to say, I was very concerned about Boston traffic with what I've heard over the years. But I have to say, it went a lot smoother than I expected. Still had some interesting times driving on the roads. Thanks for coming along and enjoying our journey with us. We're happy to have you here.